payment of tithing as fire insurance. Nonetheless, the word of the Lord is clear, that those who do not keep the commandments and observe the laws of God shall be burned at the time of his coming.
Travis Wayne Goodsell. Yesterday, I watched the NCIS episode where Emily is killed off the show. Those of you who have watched know that there are patterns in my life with NCIS. And so it hit me real hard when the little redheaded girl was murdered from the show. There are patterns. And these patterns I use since I was a little child, when Mrs. Fiskin failed me on my Idaho report. I didn't care anymore. I didn't want to memorize. There was too much memorization. And for what? A failure grade? And despite my parents arguing with her to get it raised up to a C, damage was already done. And so in order to spend the rest of my life in school, I needed to figure out an easier way to coast through until I became an adult and just had a job working at a Blockbuster Video for the rest of my life, all alone in an apartment. That failed, didn't it? But I taught myself as a child to use associative memory. It's where I recognize patterns and remember from pattern making. And so it can be frustrating when I make the wrong pattern association with women's names. But in so forgetting the right name, I then have another pattern to help reinforce the correct name if it's not too late, which in most cases, well, all cases obviously, it is too late. And so my introductions are designed after that same process. I use patterns with the introduction with what I would eventually go on to talk about. But the majority of my viewers, according to YouTube's analytics, can't last that long. They don't understand the teaching concept of introductions. And I know they've been given introductions to lessons. This is not new. I am not the inventor of it. But yet, I guess I'm too complicated in my pattern making. And so yesterday, because I have been on YouTube doing videos for 7 years, and over 3,100 videos on this channel, I recognized an anomaly. YouTube refused to count my thumbs up. And so, chatting with Diane, she was not so divine. Baby name meanings, patterns, hello? And I was able to take advantage of her weakness on understanding YouTube and their algorithms to get a confirmation that YouTube has definitely been manipulating the algorithms to silence my channel and my viewing, so that you, as best as they can, would not be recommended my videos or my channel. A year or two ago, I think it was last year, a housewife of Salt Lake City, which was a TV show, published a book that used the word Mormon in the title. This is to add to the list of controversies I did in the video, I think yesterday morning, before I watched that episode of NCIS. And so this needs to be added to it. The church, under Russell Marion Nelson, he himself getting up at the pulpit of conference and declared to Mormons, ordering them to not use nicknames, to use the full name of the church now. That the church is changing their names. Everything is changed. All previous copyrights to the nicknames are dropped. Because Jesus is angry and he's going to burn us for using nicknames. Nelson was threatening us at the pulpit of conference, as he's done in other ways, alluding to the big threat by all the prophets since Brigham Young, that if we don't pay the church tithing, we will be burned at Jesus' second coming. And so the church sued the housewife of Salt Lake City for using a copyrighted nickname. No. She gets to continue to publish her book. Back off. Just see what the church did. It was blatantly obvious that the church did not like her publishing that book. I'm a little down right now because I did a 35-minute video for you on this very subject matter. And apparently I had the headphones plugged in so you couldn't hear me. There was just no volume whatsoever. I checked the app volume and it's at 100%. So that has to be the only thing that I can figure. But I thought I plugged it back in so that I can listen to Hinckley's little comment that I put in there for you, the thread. This is why I use patterns in my life, so that when anomalies happen, I won't be gaslighted by anybody. And so, according to the patterns, that's the conclusion I make. Oops, 36 is where we start. Patterns. We have now finished the introduction at 9 minutes. The other video was 15 minutes. So we're doing good time here because I got everything in the order on this revision. Verse 36 in the Joseph Smith history. after telling me these things. What these things? About the Egyptian gold plates. If you paid attention, Nelson yesterday Instagrammed, I don't know what that's called, posted, whatever, that it's now the gold plates. That it's no longer the golden plates that he used in his April Saturday evening session of General Conference 2020. Golden. I've been giving you the clip to remind you. You can go to the church's website to continue to hear it. He says golden. Until yesterday, when I called him out. Confess, Nelson. You've been lying to Mormons about the second vision, and about church history, and about the Book of Mormon, and about the church, and etc., etc., etc. Everything is being lied about. Confess. Tell Mormons the truth. You published the Joseph Smith papers. Confess. Point out from the Joseph Smith papers the lies the church has been telling, that Nelson has been telling us. And so the only change he made was golden to gold. And he used it as a murder threat to Mormons. Because it's Egyptian gold plates. As he was trying to use a Ghanan, is that how it's pronounced? To use his threat to murder you. This is what white supremacists do. Oh, it was the Ghanan, not me. I didn't do it. I'm not threatening to murder you. The Ghanan is. Get him! By saying that the Book of Mormon from Egyptian gold plates, 200 pounds now, not the 50 pounds anymore of golden plates, 200-pound Egyptian gold plates, and they're still lying, claiming that it's literal history. Joseph Smith was buff as well, when he got him, was 27, so it'd be 22, but he was 21. So yeah, he just had barely turned an adult in 1826, December 23rd. Patterns. And so Nelson, by telling you to choose the Book of Mormon, which is not Egyptian gold plates, or diamonds and rubies. Well, obviously, we're going to choose diamonds and rubies because we can get the Book of Mormon online, or we already have our own copies of it. It was a stupid comparison, and I did the video exposing that, in which the Benjamin Franklin Johnson story, as he moves to Adam-on-Diamond and they lock him up. Who lives in it? It's an exclusive gated community. I did the thumbnail picture. I haven't given it to you guys yet. I think I gave it to somebody online, though. I can't remember. There's a lot of stuff I gave yesterday. But, yeah. He did denounce Joseph Smith's church and conformed to the Danites. That's a story the church won't tell you about. But if you watch the patterns, You go, wait a minute, he moved to Adam-on-Diamond and gets arrested? Adam-on-Diamond was where the Mormons lived, wasn't it? It's where Jesus in the latter days is going to be given the keys of government by Lucifer, because it's literal history, and is going to burn everybody to get the government back. To rule and reign over the whole earth. Because it's literal history. Non-Trinitarian Jesus is real, right? So he's a vengeful, wrathful deity who's going to burn people for using nicknames. He's pissed. And you can't catch on to this? And so Joseph is also talking about the Urim and Thummim, which constitutes seers, which you are supposed to follow the patterns. In 2 Nephi chapter 3, Joseph Smith's prophecy, Junior is coming. Yay, the Book of Mormon is true as literal history, right? Well, it's because before time of Samuel, which I did the video recently about the patterns of God in the names, said before time a prophet was called a seer. So 2 Nephi chapter 3, Joseph is the seer. He's a prophet, like the man like Moses. Well, where do we get the man like Moses from? The second vision, which ties it to the learning of the Jews. These are the patterns you're supposed to pay attention to as you're studying your scriptures. And so, after telling me about the signs in the heavens, because that's what the Urim and Thummim is about, because the patterns of the Urim and Thummim goes to the book of Abraham, where he uses the Urim and Thummim to look at the signs in the heavens. And so facsimile number 1, 2, and 3 correspond with the 3 days of darkness of the latter days. Joseph Smith knew what he was doing. He's trying to teach you. There are people trying to murder him because of what happened on 9/11/1826. It's not literal history here. But you need to know the literal history to help you understand what they're trying to tell you about. And so, what are they trying to tell you about with the Book of Mormon? Which is an exact pattern match to the second vision. Lehi's second vision. Second vision, second vision. Pattern match. 1 Nephi chapter 1. Verse 8, sign in the heavens, seers with Urim and Thummim. That date is a pattern match for Revelation chapter 12. The sign everybody talks about. Pattern match. And so Nephi, in his vision about the latter days, says, hey, the prophet of the Lamb is named John. He's going to tell you more about the latter days. Ta-da! And so Joseph Smith says, he commenced. Who commenced? It's Nephi from the Joseph Smith Papers. But he's described as Emmanuel, the sun god at noonday. From the ancient Egyptians. Pattern match. Amen. Emmanuel, the god Amen. Pattern match. Phonetically the same as the Egyptian god Amen. And he's saying he's Malachi, a messenger. Because it's the learning of the Jews. You kind of need to know some Hebrew. Because what does he start doing? He starts quoting from Malachi. And what does he say about the Malachi? He commenced quoting the prophecies of the Old Testament, not the literal history. This is not a bedtime story that Joseph Smith is getting here about the warm and fuzzy gospel of Jesus being restored. Trent and Sarah lied to you. Nelson lied to you. All the other 14 prophets lied to you. All prophets of Brigham Young's church have been lying to you. This is a nightmare that Joseph Smith is telling. And this was supposedly in 1823. He's a child being given a nightmare. And when you fully understand the nightmare, I did the picture to help you with the pattern match. And so, yes, Malachi is not literal history. It's a prophecy of the latter days. All the Bible stories are prophecies of the latter days. The ones that were rejected also are prophecies of the latter days. They need to be put back in. They need to be put in because they were all separate books originally. And so what does he say? The day that shall burn as an oven. That's not the warm and fuzzy gospel of Jesus. That sounds kind of serious. I don't know if we have sunblock that can handle this. But he adds, again, patterns so that you can recognize anomalies. You're supposed to go to Malachi. You're supposed to compare. He tells you to do so. He adds, they that come shall burn you. And I use you instead of them, because Joseph Smith is talking about future Mormons. And so in verse 40, after quoting from the Isaiah part, or Elijah part, if it were not so, the whole earth would be utterly wasted at his coming. That's a little different than the church saying that Jesus is going to burn everybody at his coming. Unless they're saying everybody's wicked, which means Mormons and the prophets are all wicked, so the earth will be utterly wasted. Or try using the learning of the Jews. Because he is supposed to come on a date. Joseph tells you this date with the pattern match. It's the 23rd of September 2017. Today is the 6-year anniversary. 17 to 23, 6 years. Unless you count 2017, then it's 7 years, but it's the final year of the latter days of 8 years. Pattern match. 8 days for Passover, for that reason. And the wrongly interpreted 8 days of Passion Week. Yeah, Jesus, not real. Prophecy of the latter-day Christ, of the Jews. That date, 23rd September 2017, that's when he starts his ministry to Mormons, as Joseph Smith tells us. So you are to replace the Jews with Mormons. You are to replace Jesus with the Mormon who would be the Christ of Mormons. You are supposed to replace Judah with Utah. And the Pharaoh, or Herod, or the Babylonian king, or whoever is the antagonist in the Jewish stories, with President Russell Marion Nelson. Because we're in the latter days. which means the Mormon Christ is among you and has been among you on YouTube telling you about the warning from Joseph Smith. So, where is he? Because Jesus failed, whether it's Trinitarian or non-Trinitarian. He was given a second chance for a second coming, and he slept through it. There's some added stuff to this video. As we got 10 more minutes to equal the amount of time on the failed video. And so Joseph Smith is doing a pattern thing for you again. He says he's quoting from the 3rd chapter of Acts. This is our Christ. He says that prophet was Christ. Who's the prophet? You got to go to Acts. It's why he doesn't tell you who that prophet is, so that you go to Acts to find out. Because he tells you right before, precisely as they stand in our New Testament. Which means the New Testament are prophecies. They're not literal history. Everything was written by the Jews as a prophecy of the latter days about the Jewish Christ. And Joseph Smith is about to tell you he's Mormon. Because Joseph continues on to say, but the day when he will be raised up, which means it's not Jesus. Jesus is not real. Jesus is not literal history. That's what that means. English grammar, guys, come on. But the day had not yet come when they who would not hear his voice on YouTube, because of the analytics, should be cut off. Did you go to Acts? Did you look for the pattern match? It's destroyed. Just like in verse 42. That Nelson used as a threat to murder you. Choose the Book of Mormon, our interpretation, or I'm going to murder you, Mormons. That's what he said. If Travis wants the wealth of the church, he'll be destroyed. Because Nelson said he's following the parable of the talents. The parable of the talents are that you're supposed to invest in the stock market and violate the SEC and get punished for $5 million, but then give it to the Christ at his second coming. But it's the learning of the Jews, so it's not Jesus. So Nelson is saying, I'm not going to give it to Jesus because Jesus doesn't exist. But the Christ is real. He's here. Just like Nelson is here. And Nelson promised to give the money to the Christ. And he's not. He instead threatened to murder Mormons. To destroy Mormons with the threat from the second vision that Joseph is warning you about. And so yes, Deuteronomy is that passage, prophecy of the latter-day Christ, who begins his ministry on the 23rd of September 2017 to Mormons. And guess what? They don't reference it here in the footnotes. But it's 3rd Nephi in the Book of Mormon, chapter 20, 23. 20, 23. Look for the pattern match. This supposedly is Jesus, non-Trinitarian, literal history in the Book of Mormon. Behold, I am he of whom Moses spake, saying, a prophet shall the Lord your God raise up unto who? Of your brethren like unto me. Him shall ye hear in all things whatsoever he shall say unto you, and it shall come to pass that every soul who will not hear that prophet shall be cut off from among the people. We know this is from Acts because he continues to quote from Acts. Verily I say unto you, all the prophets from Samuel and those that follow after have spoken and testified of me, prophesied. But the learning of the Jews is the latter-day Christ, not the Roman period non-Trinitarian or Trinitarian Jesus. That's not the Jewish learning. It's a human being. And so again, pattern match. And they won't link you to, nope, they don't. Doctrine and Covenants. Section 107, we'll go there first. Verse 91. Joseph Smith is the president of the church. Joseph Smith is giving this discourse, this section. In verse 91, he tells the newly assigned with licenses, because you check the Joseph Smith papers, right? Quorum of the 12 missionaries with the keys of only Peter. And the 70 missionaries, because you need to go to the Joseph Smith papers to learn about the difference in administration back then. That the duty of the president, Joseph Smith, of the office of the high priesthood is to preside over the whole church and to be pattern match alert like unto Moses. The key of Moses is the president of the church, not Peter. We can confirm this. The Kirtland Temple on the third day of Passover, April 3rd, 1836. Joseph has visions of Old Testament Hebrew name deities. No Jesus. Jesus is a no-show in the Kirtland Temple. But Moses appears, gives him the keys of the gathering. What gathering? Missionary work? No, that's Peter's. The Exodus gathering. And so section 103. Verse 16, talking about the latter-day redemption of Zion. Pattern match alert. Therefore, I will raise up unto my people. Talking to Joseph Smith. My people. A man who shall lead them like as Moses. Nelson doesn't claim to have the key of Moses. He claims the keys of Peter. He did the photo op at the Vatican Temple. Nelson is the false prophet. Verse 20 in Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 19. Doctrine and Covenants, section 85, verse 8. Pattern match. Mormons are in bondage to the great and abominable church. Verse 17. Because they're threatening you to pay them or they will murder you. That's bondage. That's what terrorists do. That's what criminal organizations do. Gangs, mafia, the mob. Hey, Brigham Young's redesigned authority structure is exactly like the criminal organization You have the boss, he has a counselor, we have more than one counselor, underboss, president of the 12 missionaries, and then the lieutenants are the 12, and then others in the lower ranks who carry out the orders of the boss. And then they have associates, compromised political officers, and police, and judges, and business owners, as everybody has to pay the church or die. Fire insurance, with no guarantee of a return on your investment. The very definition of gambling. Patterns. And so, knowing the real church history also helps you. Because when you see Egyptian gold plates, and you see the Holy Grail, the man like Moses, you can see the pattern match in the Book of Mormon. You're supposed to think of the Knights Templar. Yes, Chaucer, King Arthur. Not literal history. Sorry, historians. Despite the movie with Keira Knightley, excellent movie. I love that, especially Going Home song, sung by the mother. Brings me to tears too. Pattern match is what you're supposed to be paying attention to. And so Excalibur pulled out of the rock, pattern match with the Book of Jasher and Moses pulling his staff out of the rock. Pattern matches. Joseph Smith Sr. was of the York Rites, which is the highest rank of the Knights Templar. Joseph Smith Sr. knew all about the Knights Templar lore of the Holy Grail, the Egyptian gold plates. John Taylor recorded by Wilford Woodruff in his journal about claiming that Joseph saw the cave of shelves of gold plates. And so Zelf on the Shelf. I don't know if they're doing Elf on the Shelf or if they're using Zelf, the dead body that was found, and the cave of shelves of gold plates mixed together to be funny. You'd have to ask them. But patterns. You're supposed to catch on to the patterns. You're supposed to understand that the Knights Templar came to America and buried the Egyptian gold plates in the caves in southern Illinois, where X marks the spot for the 3 days of darkness, which form with the shadow of the sun god at noonday, the Paleo-Hebrew letter A, with the T for X marks the spot. And the second T in Texas has the name of the Mormon Christ, because it's not just Emmanuel. He has 3 names. The first name is Crossroads, the sun god Emmanuel, which are the latter days of darkness, solar eclipses. And then he has a third name, a middle name, that is the same name as his father's. 2 Nephi chapter 3. Because Joseph Smith is not the latter-day Christ. He's just the founding Christ, which Mormons rejected the stone and became the head of the pyramid, the capstone. Correctly interpreted and translated. There's no such thing as a chief cornerstone of a cornerstone, Nelson. Good God. And so, yes, every single story in the Bible, and stories that were refused to be put in the Bible, both Old and New Testaments, are all patterns with Deuteronomy 18:15 through 19, and even 20. that correspond with the Exodus, which is not literal history because they're all prophecies, remember? It's the 18th dynasty of Egypt, the David Moseses. That is the bloodline of King David. Solomon, his son, not literal history, did not happen. He is the King of Peace, Prince of Peace as a baby before he becomes the king. I'm giving you Paleo-Hebrew lessons here. That is the latter-day Christ symbol, the bloodline from King David. Solomon's Temple, the 18th dynasty of Egypt temple. Heliopolis, that's Zion, called On in Paleo-Hebrew, which is the universal symbol of the sun and the N for kingdom, the kingdom of the sun. The Native American Indians at X marks the spot in America, in southern Illinois, were the sun people of the sun god living in the sun city, making human sacrifices to the sun god. Solar eclipse symbolism, facsimile number 1, the first day of darkness. In Leo, on the lion couch, 21st of August 2017, the first year of the latter days, 23rd September 2017. So the Book of Mormon, in the first year of the reign of King Zedekiah, king of Judah, 23rd September 2017. It's the President of the United States put on the throne that year by a foreign government. Prophecy fulfilled. Pattern matches, guys. This is how you can use your Urim and Thummim, using the pattern matches. This is how you learn about the scripture prophecies, by pattern matching. The antagonist and protagonist, replacing the characters in the scriptures because they're prophecies of the latter-day real protagonist and antagonist. The Mormons are the Jews. So go to section 45 now. It's not Jerusalem, is it? It's Utah, Judah, phonetically the same. So I can keep going on and on, as I have. 10 minutes over, 7 minutes over, 8 minutes over, from what the original one that didn't have anything in there. Pattern match, guys. Look for the pattern matches. And you won't be deceived by false prophets presenting false Christ to tell you to worship or die.